Good morning from rainy Liverpool, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Richard.grannon and Friends. I'm joined here today by Mr. Mark Vicente. Mark, I would introduce you as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Is that how you introduce yourself?
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's
There's a lot
mission.
of other things as well, but filmmakers basically.
There's a lot you do.
There's a lot I do, yeah.
So currently you have a podcast, you have several films that you're working on.
Yes.
And that's the main thrust of what you're doing.
At the moment, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where were you born?
Yeah, so I was born in South Africa way back in 1965, so I'm an old fart now. I, traveled the world a lot because I went to boarding schools. My parents moved around a lot. I later kind of figured out that both my parents were in intelligence, so they were always moving from place to place.
Yep. When you say in intelligence, you mean South African intelligence?
South African intelligence, yeah. So, we lived in, South Africa, obviously, Brazil, Canada, Portugal, the US. And kind of early on, I lived in the bush with my grandparents for a while as well, in the middle of nowhere, which is amazing.
What age were you when you were doing that?
From the age of about 4 to maybe even 3 to 6, I was with them.
Yeah.
There were lots of divorces in my family and all kinds of craziness going on.
Yeah.
And then I went to boarding school when I was very young. I started when I was like 6.5 or something.
Yeah.
Which was quite an experience. It was a very British boarding school.
Quite right.
Way north in what was then the Transvaal, which is like close to what was then Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. So I had a boarding school life, for a lot of my life. And then at a certain point, I became obsessed with the idea of filmmaking.
How long were you in boarding school for?
Altogether, it was just over 7 years.
So
yeah,
quite a while.
Quite a while.
When did you start thinking about films? When did you fall in love with films?
So I think it's when I saw Star Wars.
Okay.
Because I had this compulsion, because South Africa was very fucked up. Apartheid, everything was just a mess. And I knew it was a mess. And the religion of my grandfather didn't have any answers,
right.
And also it was weird because in that culture, they looked in the Bible and said, like, the Bible says that black people are lesser and stuff like that. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That's not what the Bible's saying,
What was his denomination?
It was Dutch Reform.
Okay.
Which is, I guess, what is Dutch Reform?
It's anti-joy.
Yes, it's anti-joy. Is it Protestant? Is that what it is?
It is.
It is Protestant, yeah.
But it's hardcore.
Oh, it's very strict.
I've done a podcast with a Dutch guy, and he's like, there's this real thread of, it's not what people think of when they think of the Dutch, but an anti-pleasure ethic.
Yes.
Like pleasure itself is a dangerous, corrupting influence. Yeah. Even though we would think of them as being, quite cool and smoking pot and all that.
Very strict. I mean, my people on my mother's side, were farmers, people of the land, and they'd gone through terrible hardship, and during the war and different things, the Afrikaners were put in concentration camps. So they came out like tough.
Yeah. Traumatized. Very
traumatized. But I think it was around the age of 13. And actually I was in Lisbon with my parents and they took me to see, I guess it was called Guerra das Estrelas or something, Star Wars.
Yeah.
And Guerra das Estrelas. And I didn't know what it was, but I remember watching it and I was so blown away. What I do remember is walking out in the lobby and I was like consumed with this film. And my mother started talking. I said, no, shush. Because I was having a moment of some kind.
Processing.
I was processing. And I think what happened is that I'd had this feeling of like, I want to change the world. I want people to feel a certain way. And I didn't know how to do it.
Star Wars is 1978.
Was it? Yeah, 78.
And you're 18 years old.
No, then I would have been 13.
Oh, 13.
I was 13.
Okay. Yeah. So that's, of course, my maths is bad. And that's the year I was born. What do you think makes Star Wars such a special film?
I think it's there were a couple of things, but I didn't understand at that point about the hero's journey. That was one thing. Because I found out later that George Lucas, who directed it and wrote it, studied a lot of Joseph Campbell's work. But I think it was this idea of the Force, that there was this something that was unseen. And the thing was, it wasn't about religion. because as a kid, I'd had all these experiences that I couldn't explain. And the church certainly thought they were not real or they were satanic. So now I'm watching a movie that's talking about the Force and all these things, but also like I had this sort of, I was a kid still. I imagined like superpowers and moving shit with your mind and stuff. That was exciting.
Yeah.
Lucas was clever.
Yes.
You know, he made something that was very exciting, and there was all this sort of hidden stuff, not even hidden, just in there, implicitly in there. And the idea of the Force, that there was something big and profound beyond us, was like, it was like crack to me. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. But the thing that was so profound for me, besides that, is because I felt the impact it had on me, and I was realizing like, oh, so movies, like that's how you get your thoughts out. That's how you get your feelings and your message out to people. You make movies. So that was my obsession then, from 13 on.
I remember one of my earliest childhood memories in Bebington. I would have been 4 or 5 years old, and somebody saying to me, oh, this is a figure of, like these little figures that people had of Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia. And I was playing with them, and they were saying, oh, this is Star Wars, this is Star Wars. And I don't even know. I don't know what that is. And this older kid who was like 18, who was like, have you not seen Star Wars? I went, no, I don't know what you're on about. Oh, it's an amazing film. You've got to see it.
Yeah.
And it was like being proselytized to. You've got to convert to Star Wars. They recorded an old VHS for me, took it home, watched it. And I was like, for a kid, it was like, this is cool.
Feeling, right?
Yeah,
Incredible. Yeah. It is kind of a religion now, unfortunately. I mean, the Star Wars people are going to be upset at me, but there are people now that this is their life. You know, they go to every convention, they dress up, and it's like, wow, it's kind of hardcore. I mean, I went to, when I a few years after I met my wife, because she was in Star Wars.
You should explain that.
Yeah.
So you actually have a real life professional Star Wars connection.
No, it's insane. So what happened was that a friend of mine knew that I was a Star Wars fanatic, and she said, oh, I have a friend, you should meet her. She's in Star Wars.
And which Star Wars was she in?
She was in, oh my God, what was it?
It's not a New Hope.
It's not the very first one. It was the next two. No, sorry. So it was the fourth and the fifth, not in order of the story, but in
canon.
Order of shooting.
Yes. Yeah.
It was the fourth and the fifth. And she played Beru Whitesun, who was the aunt that raises Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
Like in the very first movie, you see them, burnt to death.
You see them killed.
Because the stormtroopers come and kill them. So I was like, oh, that'd be great. And so her name was Bonnie Peace. And so I met her. And then I found out that she was a fan of mine, because I made a film called What the Bleep Do We Know? And she was a huge fan of What the Bleep Do We Know?
Have you all seen What the Bleep Do We Know?
Yeah, it's a strange film.
Check it out on YouTube.
Yeah, it's very dated now, but back then it was like a big deal.
Well, it was mind blowing, and it was the same effect as Star Wars.
Yes.
What the Bleep Do We Know? The way I found that was the same way as I found Star Wars. A mate of mine was like, "Have you seen What the Bleep?" I was like, "What are you on about? What kind of a title is that?"
Yeah.
And he gave me a DVD and was like, "Sit down.
Yeah.
I will make you a coffee and watch this now." And then pinned my eyes open, Clockwork Orange style, and forced me to watch it.
Yeah.
In 2004, if you were into New Age and personal development, you couldn't get away from it.
No.
And it was mind blowing at that time. I mean, it was
the time,
yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So she was a huge fan of that. And so we sort of connected, and, we stayed friends for a number of years. And then, a few years later, sort of became romantically involved. But yeah, so just to fast forward, my wife said to me one day, this was a few years later, like, I have a Star Wars convention in Mexico City. Do you want to come? I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So we went to this convention, and it was very strange because I'd never been to a convention before. So she walks in, and she gets handled by security, and the next thing, they drag her away, and there's Darth Vader and her, and then all these stormtroopers around her, and they start marching into this massive auditorium. And I'm just back there thinking, okay, I'm chopped liver, whatever, I'll just watch. It was so weird. And the music plays, and they're sort of marching her in, and I was like,
they do the Imperial March.
The Imperial March. It was insane.
Yeah.
And then I walked in this auditorium, and I saw all these fans. I'm like, my God, this is intense. Now, I think that as a kid, as a 13-year-old kid, if that was available to me, I would have totally done all that.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
And then more recently, she was in the series Obi-Wan Kenobi, because they brought her character back, and Joel Edgerton's character back as well. And we went to the big premiere in Anaheim, and it was unbelievable. I mean, we walked into an auditorium, and again, they march everybody in and, sit them down in a certain place. And there was I think about 7,000 people. And all you saw were just lightsabers, waving. It was insane.
Kind of sounds like a cult, Mark.
It does sound like a cult. Some of it sometimes is a bit like that.
So,
if you say anything bad about Star Wars folklore,
yeah,
you will be dealt with.
You're in the out group.
Yeah.
Just back to the film itself. What you said, there's the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
The world building was pretty good compared to other movies. I don't really think of a movie before that where that crazy guy built a whole world for his characters to operate in.
And the thing is, it felt real because the way he saw space was not futuristic and gleaming. It was dirty. It was like so far in the future that there was old technology that was being used. So it was this sort of Western feel, like a cowboy movie with like the Buck Rogers vibe all put together. And there was something about it that was so tactile and real, like there was dirt on everything.
Yeah.
And there was aging on everything.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I watched something that felt so real. It wasn't, the old Battlestar Galactica and the old Buck Rogers. And everything was just too new.
Yeah.
And you could kind of feel that it was shot in a studio.
Yes.
It felt like, especially in the first movie, this was a real place.
Yes.
These were real places, you know? And the other thing, weirdly, that still stuck with me for so long is, remember, those of you that have seen it on Tatooine, the two suns, when Luke is standing there, those two suns, there was something about that, because I yearned for, I suppose as a kid, because of South Africa and how difficult it was, I was yearning for another kind of world.
The two suns was always something that impacted me right in the unconscious. Like I was looking at something I'd seen before in another life.
Exactly. That's how it felt.
And the moon as Death Star was really compelling for me. I was like, because I was always looking at the moon as a kid and I was like, what is that? And it's exactly the right size and shape that if there's an eclipse, it just perfectly eclipses. Come on, that's been built by someone, Lara.
It's like the moon was positioned very well.
Yeah, really, really
it's
well.
Odd.
It tickles the unconscious, I think. The whole, certainly the first 3 Star Wars movies, right up to when the Ewoks arrive, I think it's great. If you could stop it. Where Return of the Jedi, where they rescue Han Solo, they blow up Jabba the Hutt's palace and they fly away. Yeah. That's the end of the movie.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just stop there.
No, exactly.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the favorite one is the first half of Return of the Jedi. I was obsessed with the fact that it's shot in Tunisia. I think it all takes place in the desert.
Yeah.
You said sometimes it's like a Western and sometimes it's almost got like a Lawrence of Arabia feel to it.
Yeah.
And even the character of Obi-Wan, who lives out in the desert and he's this old ninja with his samurai sword. It's so cool.
Do you know the Lars homestead in Tunisia is still there?
Oh, really?
It's become a tourist attraction now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. For Obi-Wan Kenobi, they rebuilt it in Los Angeles I suppose I can say it now because it's out now. So in a mine quarry in like kind of the middle of the city. Oh. There was an old quarry.
Yeah.
And they used that and a bunch of blue screen all the way around and they sort of redid Tunisia, there. And actually worked pretty well.
Yes. Yeah. There is the only cinematic experience I'd say that I would compare to that I would, obviously I'll never direct, but when I am jealous of directors and I think, fuck, I wish I'd done that. Star Wars comes to mind and Peter Jackson's efforts with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Because of the world building. Yeah. Because if you're a director, you're a storyteller, I want to enter your story completely.
Yeah.
I want to be on that journey.
Yeah.
And so few movies do that.
Very few.
But with Star Wars and with Lord of the Rings, do you like Lord of the Rings as movies?
I do. I do like it. I'm not as much of a fan as some people. Yeah. Like I'm a big fan also of like Alien, Ridley Scott's world. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that is serious world building.
Yes. Yes. Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
You got Alien and Blade Runner. For world building, I've
seen Blade Runner more than any other movie in history.
It's really?
Yeah. I used to do the Rutger Hauer speech, from the end.
Yes.
The Time to Die speech.
Lost like tears in the rain.
Yeah. All those moments we lost like tears in rain. Yeah. He starts with, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Yes.
Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've seen sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All these moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain. Time to Die.
Yeah.
So I memorized this damn thing.
Yeah.
So then, many years later, I'm in LA. I've just shot the movie Sarafina with Whoopi Goldberg. I'm in LA. She calls me and says, hey, come over for dinner. I have somebody I want you to meet. And I walk into this really high-end restaurant and she's sitting with Rutger Hauer. I'm like, and I sit down and I'm like, I can barely speak.
Yeah.
And he's just a normal human being.
Of course.
And I'm just like, oh, it's you.
The replicant is here.
It's you. And I said, I memorized that speech. And he goes, yeah. I'm like, oh, I thought you'd be more excited.
Is it? I don't know if it's folklore or if it's actually true that he wrote that or he improvised it.
I don't know.
Or it's a last minute script change.
It might have
like
been.
That.
It might have been. Yeah.
But it's beautifully delivered.
Oh my God!
It's such a beautiful peak to the film. Like,
yeah.
It really
no, it's
the film well.
I love. I'm a huge sci-fi fan like you. I love living in those worlds, and I love it because you can address things and talk about things that you can't in normal drama.
Yes.
I watched all Star Treks, every episode, everything, because you can talk about like deep issues.
Yeah.
And it's acceptable because it's a metaphor that's removed. You can talk about the abuse of religion. You can talk about racism. You can talk about this. You can talk about that.
Yeah.
You can talk about existential crisis and isolation and like, who are you? And, do you even exist? And blah, 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 all that stuff. And it gave me this freedom as a kid to explore these ideas. So sci-fi it's probably my favorite genre. It's sci-fi and then it's action.
I with Star Trek, I really liked the old one because in Portugal in the 80s, they only had the budget to buy like older series.
Oh, yeah.
So I was raised on stuff that people would watch in the 50s in America, like The Twilight Zone, The Rifleman, and Star Trek, but the old Star Trek. And it obviously you watch it now and it's camp and it's hokey and whatever.
Yeah.
But it was like every season was like a philosophical exploration of something.
Yeah.
I like it because it's good natured.
Yeah.
It's actually. I don't know. Like people take the piss out of what's the actor who plays Captain Kirk?
Fuck. How am I blanking right now?
Because I've put you on the spot. That's why
I can't think of it. It's in my head. I met him.
And the dynamic he has with Leonard Nimoy. Apparently they didn't really like each other very much.
Didn't they?
Apparently not. They weren't like really, really close friends. But
and he was always very buff, and there were always very beautiful women around him all the time.
William Shatner.
Thank you.
William Shatner. How did I not know that? My God. I was picturing him. Yeah, he actually came to a screening of What the Bleep, when we were first doing like test screenings, he came.
Oh, awesome.
It was cool.
Yeah.
It was he loved it.
I've had like... There's stories from stand-up. He apparently likes stand-up comedy, and I'm big in stand-up comedy as well. And like, he'll go and chat to stand-up. It's always positive. It's always like he's a nice guy. He's very supportive, and there's a lot of What the Bleep, in a sense, is an exploration of the Force.
It is, yeah. It was this weird attempt to unify a whole bunch of things, because we were talking about neurobiology and biology and quantum mechanics and really exploring the idea that reality is not what you think it is.
Right.
It's much more malleable, and we have a lot to do with it. I think we really stretch things a lot. A lot of people call it pseudoscience.
The quantum physics.
Yeah, I would agree. There was actually a physicist at Columbia University that we got on camera, David Albert. Mm-hmm. Young guy at that time. And David Albert felt very tricked, because he felt that we used his stuff in a certain way. So we had this big symposium in Santa Monica one day, and David Albert was invited, and he came up to me and said, "I'm very angry at you." And I go, "Okay." And he says, "You've really twisted my words." And I thought about it, and I thought, okay, so tell me the truth. And he said, because I thought he was going to say it's all hogwash that you've done. And he said, the problem is you've simplified it.
Yeah.
It's so much more mysterious than you've presented it.
Yeah.
It's way more mysterious and way more interesting.
Yeah.
And you've sort of turned it into this spiritual, new agey thing.
Well, it fit into an ideological reality tunnel.
It did, yeah. And he said to me, that's what I'm angry at. And I said, okay, when you go up and it's your turn, say that. And he's like, really? I go, yeah, say that.
Yeah.
I thought it was great, and it really struck me because as I, after making the film, as I studied more and more, I realized, we did a very simplified version of what it is. And we conveniently said, this means that. Because of the double slit experiment, therefore it means you can change things with your mind.
Well, that was actually my favorite part, because I remember everybody said that in the New Age movement at the time. Deepak Chopra said that in his book, Synchrodestiny. And it's just a misunderstanding of a scientific term, which is observer.
Yeah.
So we all went, oh, there's an observer effect. That means a human observer. And in physics, an observer is a tool, is a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And it's actually a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
It's not a person.
Yeah. No, it's not a person at all. It's a sensor.
It's a sensor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not a tool, a sensor.
Yeah.
And we all made that, people make the same mistakes in psychology. They hear a word that in normal usage means this, and everybody just ran with the ball like, oh, if you think differently, it changes reality.
It's true. But at the same time, because if we do a test here and you say to me, Mark, lift the glass with your mind, I can't do it. But then there are these weird things that happen.
Yeah.
Like you haven't seen somebody for a long, long time. You think about them obsessively suddenly and you bump into them.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, how?
Yeah.
Is it possible that I saw them out of the corner of my eye, didn't realize it? Is there something, was there a glitch in my mind? Was like a weird deja vu thing, a loopy thing that happened? That I did see them, didn't see them consciously. A loopy thing happened where I thought a whole 24 hours went by and now I bump into them. I have no idea. But reality does feel a bit glitchy sometimes.
Yeah.
So David Albert was right.
Yeah.
It's very mysterious. And for us to pretend we know exactly how it works, like I don't think we have the equipment. I'm geeking out now.
Go.
I don't think we have the equipment, to actually get what's going on.
Right.
I think we're very, very limited.
100%.
Because, if you go into meditative states, so we talk about time, we're cognitively awake, we talk about time. You go into meditative states and you have the experience of no time and no distance. And you're like, well, that's weird. Is that just imagination? How do I know sometimes what somebody's thinking? How can I actually repeat the very thing they were thinking? How do people know when somebody dies at the moment they die? There's all these weird things. So I'm left with, I don't fucking know. It's incredible. I'm probably never going to know.
And what the fuck do we know?
And what the fuck do we know?
I think the way I look at it sometimes is like maybe quantum physics and neurobiology are in their infancy. Yeah. And in 200 years' time, all of this will be within the realms of science. It won't be considered supernatural. It will be considered natural.
Yeah.
There seems to be, as a human being having the human experience, some kind of a web that connects us that can't be described with our current understanding of mechanistic reality.
No.
And everybody watching will have had multiple experiences like the one you're describing.
Yeah.
And one day it might just be within the realms of science that goes, we know where that happens now.
Yeah.
Our view of reality was a little bit messed up.
Yeah.
And now we understand. Yes, we are kind of psychically connected.
Another thing I've been thinking a lot about, I mentioned this in a podcast episode. I think about people that might listen to a conversation and say, okay, that shit doesn't exist. And they're so ferocious in the belief. And then they say, if you think of these things, you're crazy or you're a conspiracy theorist or whatever. And then I think about, okay, so let's go look at the conspiracy theorists. They see connections that do not appear to be there. Some of them are just making shit up. So they're very vested in something that really doesn't exist. But then you look at the person that says it's all bullshit, but that's the same process. You're saying this is impossible.
Yes, you're talking about epistemological dichotomania. Both people are rigidly stuck at the dogmatic ends of both polarities.
Correct.
So I absolutely know that there is no conspiracy.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you know that?
How do you know?
I absolutely know that everything is a conspiracy.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you know that?
Yeah.
What data are you receiving that I'm irritated by people's certainty, but another part of me admires it. I'm like, if I had more of that in my life, I'm sure I'd get way more done. I'd have like more grandiose visions.
Yeah.
It's my uncertainty that keeps me sitting back and just going, I don't really know. I don't really know.
When I was in different groups that turned out to be cults, the certainty was incredible.
You must have certainty.
I knew what the truth was, and it felt great, and I felt confident. I didn't have doubt.
Yeah.
If there was doubt, it was buried very, very deeply in my, subconscious or something. But it felt kind of like invincible, It felt kind of like an armor.
So, this is interesting. So certainty itself feels good and therefore becomes like a kind of a drug.
It's like a drug because you know and they don't know.
Oh, that's even better,
You're
mate.
superior.
Oh, I love that.
And you're like up your own narcissistic asshole. You know,
best place to be.
The best place to be. and you know, coming out of that, you know, which we'll talk about in our course, coming out of that, you know, you hit complete uncertainty.
Yeah.
And chaos.
Yeah.
But you know, when you live in that bubble, like you meet people that are maybe very religious and they really know how the world works, they think. And it's rock solid.
Yeah.
And they have an excuse for everything. There is kind of and you might say, well, they're stupid. Okay. Yeah, maybe. But there's kind of the system is so perfect that they live in.
Yeah.
That I wonder if, like, I know for myself, I took certain risks and I would say certain things boldly on camera, on television, that now I look back and say, that's insane. But I was so sure of myself.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And then you think about the sort of malignant, narcissistic sociopaths and psychopaths that, you know, we may run into in life. Some of them are so confident.
Yeah.
Because their delusions are amazing.
Yes. So there maybe it's got legs to suggest that there's some overlap between narcissistic psychopathy and absolutely rigid, dogmatic certainty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's kind of a fantastical worldview because you really can't be certain. So that's a kind of a fantasy.
It's a fantasy.
I don't mind when people are rigidly certain about their view of reality.
Yeah.
It's when they start telling people that they know how they should live.
Oh, yeah.
Then I'm thinking, hey, brother, you know, maybe you should
just
calm
chill out,
down
you know?
a little,
Yeah,
sit, look at tree and relax a little. No, everybody must live this way.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
yeah.
And you just think, oh, that's neurosis, man.
Yeah, it is. That's why philosophy is great, because philosophy, you get to recognize different frames of reference that people have.
Yeah.
And you get to know, well, if this person believes this, they think this. If this, you know, you start to realize other people are different.
Yeah.
And you start to really, you know, for somebody that's very dogmatic, I mean, it's a good empathy builder because you're like, oh, someone is different. There's another you. There's another I in there that's not me.
Oh, I love talking to people like that. I've had conversations. There's two real neo-Nazis that I've known over the years. Really? One served in a German. He was raised in Eastern Germany, and he served in a German unit that could track its lineage directly back to the Nazis. And another one was Croatian, and obviously they were for a while with the Nazis in World War II, and they still believed in the neo-Nazi ideology. I found that fascinating. I was like, tell me. I remember saying to one guy, my girlfriend's Chinese. Do you hate me for having a Chinese girlfriend? He's like, no. I like Chinese people in China. I was like, okay.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And I was like, but what if I was with her and we produced children? What would happen in your world order? And he said, well, that would be a problem. You're not genetically pure anymore. And I was like, wow. And these were not... they're both gym guys. They weren't drug users. They weren't drunk.
They weren't raging people.
No, they were very calm, and they'd be like, "This is how it should be." And there's conspiracy theory in there. The story of Hitler that we're fed, the story of the Nazis that we're fed, is not the real story. And I'd be like, okay, so we have quite a lot of footage. We have quite a lot of data. Which are the bits that you think the world is? I want to know. It's to me, okay, some of this stuff is vile, but even if somebody has a vile ideology, I still want to explore it. If I met a black supremacist who thought all white people were devils, there's a movement where they believe white people were an experiment gone wrong, like by some mad black professor.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a if I could sit down with somebody like that, I'd love to do it just to see, okay, how do you see the world? Because maybe if I can stretch my mind to to a worldview that's not mine, I could pick up something that's useful. There could be something there. Even in the exercise of neuroplasticity, of entering that reality and going, okay, why would you think all white people are demonic? Where are you getting that from? Let's explore that. What are the underpinning beliefs?
Yeah, and also, as you say, like going into their matrix, so to speak, and feeling what that must feel like. What does it feel like? Yeah. I had this dream. This is really weird. This is way back when, and I was, friends with Whoopi Goldberg at that point, and she was very good friends with Richard Gere, who was spending a lot of time with the Dalai Lama. And I guess I got this idea. I did this, what I thought was a past life regression. I'm not sure if it was or is or true or not true. But in this past life regression, I am, a Tibetan monk, and I get locked up in underground somewhere, and I die. And I remember feeling such enormous grief about it. And how could this happen? And
do you know that's how they kill people in Tibet?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're not allowed to actively kill you, so they'll put you underground and starve you to death. That was the traditional method of execution centuries ago.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And here again, maybe I did know that and forgot.
Maybe.
And made it up.
Not many people know that.
But
I don't even know how I know that.
But that was my vision, right?
Right.
And again, I'm not saying this is true. And I'm walking around with this feeling of like, how could they do this? How could this was the Chinese that did it. Not it was the Chinese that put me in.
Okay.
Apparently.
Yeah.
In the story. So I was thinking, how could the Chinese do this? And then I had a dream one night. And in the dream, I am a Chinese tank commander. And I'm like on the turret of the tank looking out. And I feel such immense pride about who we are and what we're doing and how good it is and all the soldiers that are under my command. And I just remember looking and seeing monks.
Yeah.
And just ordering my men to open fire. And there was no anguish about it. There was just, this is part of cleaning up.
Yeah.
And I woke up so shocked. And I was like, oh my God, I think I entered the mindset, that frame. I entered the frame. And it fucking makes sense.
There was a Netflix series I was recommending to you, and I took a screenshot of it. It's called World War II from the Front Lines.
Yeah.
And I recommend it to you as a filmmaker and somebody who's interested in history and to the people watching. It's colorized. We've seen colorized stuff before, but there's a lot of lingering shots of people in the grip of an ideology where what you see is collective power and delight. When they're doing the shots of like the Stalinist military displays of power, the marches. In my opinion, as somebody who's interested in psychology, these people look high. And I don't think they're high on drugs. I think they're high on endorphins. They know that they are the answer to all of humanity's problems. Every single shot of the Nazis, it's self-shot. It's Nazi propaganda, where they're walking around. The human face can't smile broader than that. They're so happy. The officers, the infantrymen, everybody, when Hitler is near them, they're giddy. These are grown men who are silly. They're like little boys. There's so much joy there from this. It's like a drug, the drug of certainty, the drug of like, and I've always kind of imagined in my postmodern late stage capitalist cynicism that they were all like, oh yeah, we're the master race. Or yeah, sure. Yeah. As long as I get paid, as long as I get a pretty wife at the end of this and a nice place, a nice cottage out in the German mountains. No, they really believe. Yeah. And it's stunning to see colorized human faces so lost in the ideology.
Yeah, they're transfixed on the vision as well.
Yeah.
Transfixed is the kind of word I use. Like they're seeing something nobody else can see.
Right.
And that's why it's difficult to negotiate with a person like that.
Oh.
Because they're not in reality at all.
No. You know? And you can see, back to the historical data, when you look at, like, say, example, Hitler, you look at the resources he had, you look at the money he had, you look at the number of tanks he had, the number of men he had, and I'm just looking at the map and I'm like, why is he invading on so many fronts?
Yeah.
They're high on meth.
Yeah.
They literally, the Germans created meth. That's meth is a Nazi drug, which people can read up about, you know, the poor soldiers.
And they kind of did the impossible.
They really did.
Yeah.
And
I'm not admiring it. I am not fucking admiring it.
Put that hand down.
I'm not admiring it.
We are not admiring.
We are not admiring it.
Not admiring. It was a wonderful moment, very sad.
And I said the impossible in reference to what he was saying.
Well, you know, humanity had a chance and we lost it. What can we do? It's all gone.
God,
all gone.
I can just see somebody clipping that and saying,
we'll be down in Argentina and southern Brazil next week with our comrades. And it's
I'm having a coughing fit about this.
Well, and then you see in this Netflix series, you see Bedouin doing the Hitler salute. You see Black Africans doing the Nazi salute. This thing gripped the world. It wasn't like Nazism wasn't German. Nazism was global. It was a brand. And in terms of like branding and everything else, it was extremely modern. It was extremely forward looking. Suits by Boss. I sit here with my head shape, with my suit. I'm wearing all Hugo Boss.
Oh, you really?
Yeah. Did you know Boss? You know this, like that they designed their uniforms?
Yes.
And produced them. The cars, even the weaponry they came up with, it's old now, of course, but at the time, it's high-tech stuff.
Who is the branding person?
Goebbels.
Goebbels is the branding person.
Goebbels is your branding man. The movies they made, the way they used media.
Yeah. Lenny Riefenstahl, Triumph of the Will.
Yeah, obviously people had done it, but not like that. Not in that way at that time. And I've looked around online and I'm seeing a lot of young people in the comments from the clips of this saying, I've never been interested in World War II or history before, but suddenly now, for some reason, I find it fascinating to go back. And I feel that. I feel this zeitgeist movement to just look into our recent past, World War II, World War I, and be like, what was the mass hysteria that led to so much violence, to so much horror in the end, so much atrocity?
Right.
And how did these men, who we must presume, in all due humility, they have the same brains we do, they're as evolved as we are, they're largely raised on the same diet, and life hasn't changed that much. How could they do what they did and smile and laugh and be like, yes, this is great. It's this grand vision where they really, literally, not cynically, not ironically, in their hearts believed we will save the human race.
Yeah. And people are far more programmable than I think the general populace realizes.
Because they're suffering from this this thing that I am. Obviously, I'm 45, but I work a lot online. And so I'm consuming a lot of online content. So I would claim that any of us who are exposed to a lot of like Instagram memes and TikTok culture, we end up with like a millennial Gen Z mindset, even if we're not. And I have this hipstery, postmodern cynicism, like, it's so dumb. We're so woke now. We'd never do that again. And in the last couple of years, I've been like, we're doing it again. I can hear the war drums. They're quiet now, but they're raising in pitch and volume. It's not that long until people jump into the uniforms and go, we have the solution. We have the big solution all over again. We just have to get rid of, I don't know, pick someone. It's Nietzsche's ressentiment all over again. Just pick the group. Yeah. Let's go to war.
In the course that people can watch with you and I talk a lot about my cult experience.
What led you into cults?
Well,
go on.
Let me tell you this thing. I'll go back.
Go ahead.
Keith Raniere, the cult leader, came up with the idea of having the second in command, Nancy Salzman, record videos of herself and play them for the class. So most of the classes were her on a television set and then a trainer. And the reason he said that we should do that, that they should do that, was before my time, was because he said there's something that happens psychologically when you look at somebody in a television set. It elevates them. And I was like, that's interesting, because we got television in South Africa very late. I think 1976, we got television.
You're joking?
No, late, very late.
You didn't have television until 1976?
No.
Oh, I'm sure there must be anthropologists and sociologists who've written about that.
And then when we did have it, it was a limited amount of time. I think at first it was like 3 hours. And so my grandfather, who was an advertising executive, I remember the night we sat and we waited for the very first broadcast because he wanted to see if one of the commercials he had made would be on. But I remember the news anchors coming on and they felt like gods, And it was so cute now that I look back at it, that we looked at these people like they were speaking the truth. Later, when I was a news cameraman, I had the experience of going to shoot something, seeing what happened, and then that night on television watching my footage, and the story the anchors told about the footage was an absolute lie.
Really?
And I was like, motherfuckers, that's not what happened.
You gave them the footage and they put in a different spin.
Yeah, they basically said these people attacked these people. What actually happened is the cops attacked them.
Right.
They blamed a rival faction. And I was like, Jesus. And that was really, for me, the moment I understood, like, you guys are not doing truth. You're just serving whatever agenda. Now, at that time, what I understood later was that the South African intelligence and the news were the same.
Right.
Now, the thing people don't realize is they think, well, that's all changed now. Now we have real journalism. Mm-hmm. I can promise you it's the same. I can promise you, no matter which country you live in, it is exactly the same. You're not hearing the truth, but what happens is you're watching somebody in that glamorous box, dressed very well. They have a very clear script, and you think you're getting the truth. So under those circumstances, you believe whatever they say. They tell you who to hate. Yeah. They tell you who to approve of. I just did a podcast about this. It's called A Soldier's Story, I think.
What is the name of your podcast?
The name of my podcast is What the Fuck is on My Mind, shortened to WTF is on my mind.
WTF is on my mind.
Yeah, and it's basically whatever I'm thinking about, in any given week or month, I
highly recommend it. Give it a go. It seems like we're living in a blend of 1984 and Brave New World.
Yeah, and the thing that's weird is that because people aren't reading enough history at the moment, they think they've figured everything out. They're going to do it differently than everybody else. And I'm looking at what's happening right now in the Western world. I'd say especially in the Five Eyes countries. For people who don't know what the Five Eyes, it's an agreement between the intelligence agencies of Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, one other country I can't remember, where you can't spy on your own citizens, but you can spy on each other's citizens. They share information. What I'm seeing is the same kind of stuff that happened in South Africa. So for me, it's still very fresh. For some people, it may have been a long time ago, but for me, the 80s in South Africa, the 70s and the 80s, and the control that the government had and the intelligence agencies had, I'm seeing some of the same stuff now.
Yeah.
But there's a weird thing going on where people are like, no, that can't be. Our leaders love us.
They wouldn't do that.
They wouldn't do that. They're thinking about us. All their decisions are about us. And the reason they make millions upon millions of dollars of deals and things is because they're thinking of us. It's cute.
It is cute.
It's bullshit, but it's cute.
No, we're effectively slaves living on a nicer plantation.
Yes.
And we're being harvested for our tax. That's it.
Yes.
That's all we are.
Ah, you conspiracy theorist, you.
You dirty, dirty conspiracy theorist. My father was also not in intelligence, but he was attached to intelligence. When he was in the RAF, he did some checking on, he was taught Russian, hot-housed. They took these RAF guys and hot-housed them in Russian in 3 months. And then they would listen to Russian dialogue and analyze Russian dialogue that they picked up on radio chatter and pilots talking to each other, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he had a very, very, he didn't consider himself a conspiracy theorist at all, but very conspiratorial worldview. He was like, the news is not the news. You've no idea what you're being told. Just assume the whole thing is pure propaganda.
Yeah.
It's pure ideology and propaganda. There's nothing else.
My dad told me the same thing. Because I'd come back from something and say, oh, this is in the news. And he'd go, yeah, that's not what's going on.
You have described yourself as a cult hopper.
Yeah. So let me pick up to when you said, why did you join a cult?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you don't join a cult.
Yeah, nobody's like, there's a cult. Let's join.
You never join a cult. You join something. And in this HBO series that I'm in called The Vow, at one point I have a whole monologue where I yell about it and I say, nobody joins a vow, they join a good thing. Sorry, nobody joins a cult.
Nobody joins a cult.
The vow is not a cult. Nobody joins a cult, they join a good thing. And what I meant was, you join something you think is good.
Yeah.
And so for me, after I made What the Bleep, it became very big. I was traveling all around the world, with my other producers. And this group of people, and this happened a few times, and a number of people reached out and said, we want to talk to you. We want you to make a movie about our particular philosophy or whatever. And I got a letter from somebody who said, we saw your film, we love your film, we want to invite you to a symposium with a number of scientists. And it was people like Fritjof Capra and a bunch of really cool people. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so I ended up meeting it was two ladies, ended up meeting with them. And they were very smart. Like One of them was a master NLP trainer, which I didn't know what that was at that point. And basically they said to me, everything you're talking about in your movie, we know how to do it. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then they said, well, why don't you just come and take one of our courses? And I said, I'm just very busy and blah, blah, blah. And okay, find 5 days, you know. And so it was a business school. It was called Executive Success Programs. And so eventually I decided, okay, I have a little window here, you know. But what happens before that, to really seal a deal, is they've said to me, you know, we can help you make your movies, yada, yada, yada. So one day I get a call, this is before my training, I get a call to say, we want to fly into town to see you. At this point, I'm living in Oregon, in Ashland, Oregon. Want to fly into town. Would you be willing to introduce us to some of the scientists in your film? We'd like to talk to them. And I go, sure, I'm okay with that. So the day comes, and I'm about to head to the airport, and I go, which airline? And they go, oh no, it's the little airport, the other one. And I'm like, go to the other airport, and this Learjet lands, and I get picked up in a Learjet, and now for a week they're flying me all over the country in a very, very expensive Learjet that's owned by one of the people in this group. In fact, there's 2 women on the plane. One of them owns the plane. And it's, you know, whining and dining and whatever and meeting the scientists. And it's kind of like, for me, who just loves science and loves scientists, it was amazing, you know. And then they said, you know, we think we can help you make some of the movies. Now, I'm flying in a very expensive Learjet, being promised, you know, that we can probably help you do these things. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I have hit the jackpot. So I eventually go and do the training. And it's like a bunch of NLP stuff and maybe some Scientology stuff and a bunch of it's to me it seems very advanced, and they're able to fix something that I struggle with very quickly. And I'm like, okay, these people have got their shit figured out. Now I joined a business program. 12 years later, I realize it's a fucking cult. And the leader is a fucking sociopath. And he's doing horrible things to people. You know, so what the on-ramp is you join something that's awesome, and the off-ramp is, holy shit, what just happened?
For people who don't know, or if they haven't seen The Vow, the leader, Keith Raniere, what sentence was he eventually given?
So he was given 120 years. And he's currently somewhere in Arizona in a maximum security prison.
And his crimes that he was convicted of?
It was things like sex trafficking, conspiracy to sex trafficking, wire fraud. It was a bunch of other things. I can't even remember all of them. It was 7 charges.
And you were working with the FBI for a while to get him put away. Yeah,
I was actually hammering on their door, a number of agencies, not only the FBI, DEA, FBI, police in several countries, trying to get this man prosecuted. And I even had, with a bunch of people, we figured out what the case is. You know, it was a racketeering case, but we couldn't get anywhere because nobody was listening to us. Or the people that were listening were like, it's just too much to take on. It's too big. It's too expensive to take it on. So we went to the New York Times and we spoke to New York Times journalists, and a lot of us went on the record. And once that came out, that was October 2017. Once that came out, shortly after that, another division of the FBI reached out and started talking to us. And that's when the case began.
That other division already had experience with cults and groups.
I don't know if they did, but I do know that they'd had experience because, you know, the FBI has experience with like mafia type organizations.
Okay.
And in essence, what this was that.
Okay.
It was just wearing the cloak of personal development.
Yeah.
You know, but they did the same kinds of, they weren't explicitly killing people. But, you know, if you stepped out of line, they went after you. Using legal means, spying on you, you know.
They would hire private investigators.
A lot of the time. Yeah. A lot of the time, yeah.
Trying to dig for dirt.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you go to the course, we discuss a lot of this in the course.
That's true. The course that we have just spent 3 days shooting here in lovely Liverpool, where we wanted to explore the overlap between narcissistic abuse and cult abuse, and the recovery from narcissistic abuse and cult abuse. Turns out there's quite a bit of overlap.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Almost, I would say, cult abuse is narcissistic abuse writ large.
Pretty much. It's sort of like narcissistic abuse in a family. It's just the family has a lot of siblings and children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we were doing the course, there was a couple of light bulb moments for me where I could really see the overlap. As you just described, being flown around in a Learjet and people telling you that, listen, we recognize you, we see you, you really have a gift, and we're going to fund your movies. That would be what I would call the bait and the covert contract that people get in romantic, narcissistic, abusive relationships. There isn't a filmmaker alive who would refuse that temptation, right?
We filmmakers are hungry, not for money. We're hungry to make our art.
Yeah.
And so if somebody comes along and says, I will help you do that, and you don't think they're a complete scoundrel, you're like, I'm in.
You're going to do it.
And the thing is, when you meet nice people, you know they're not scoundrels.
Yeah.
Much later, you realize, oh, that's not true.
Yes.
That's not true.
Yeah.
You know, but every filmmaker is so desperate. I mean, maybe every artist, I'm not sure. They're desperate to get it out. You know, and maybe some think, oh, because then I'll have love and attention. But like for some of us, it's just, there's something in me, I need to get it out. And you need help to do it. Filmmaking is collaborative. It's not, it's not the auteur, my own thing.
I think for some filmmakers, it is narcissistic, and it's what it will get them that they're craving, but they usually make shitty films. For real creatives, it reminds me of a biblical quote, to Mark. And it didn't make the official Bible. It's from the Gospel of Thomas. It's a Gnostic gospel in which Jesus says, if what is within you is brought forth from you, what is within you will save you. If what is within you is not brought forth from you, what is within you will destroy you. And I think for true creatives, it's like you have something in you that must come out.
It's an imperative. It's like a survival imperative. It's not, but it feels like it.
Yes, it's extremely somatically uncomfortable to not express the thing that's inside of you.
That's the thing I think about. I think about if I die and I don't get some of these things out, it would feel terrible.
Yeah. So you have this mission to get this stuff out.
Yeah.
In terms of films, can you name me some of your favorite films?
Obviously Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blade Runner, Alien, and then there's funny little films like Princess Bride.
Oh yeah.
I love Princess Bride.
That's a good movie.
I love it. I'm trying to think of the other movies I love. Like I love The Abyss. I do also honestly love some of in recent times. I love Gladiator. You know, there's a filmmaker named Alex Garland who made Ex Machina,
and he did The Beach as well.
He did. Did you? Yeah, he did The Beach. Yeah, and he's actually got a new movie coming out called Civil War. His stuff is very heady. But I find it so interesting. My other favorite filmmaker is who's now gone is Terrence Malick. Terrence Malick made Days of Heaven.
So I'm so sorry.
No, sorry, Terrence Malick is not gone. I'm sorry, he's alive. What am I saying?
I have to know whether it might actually be Danny Boyle on The Beach. Sorry, it was Danny Boyle.
It's Danny Boyle. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. So Terrence Malick made a movie called Badlands, and he made Days of Heaven. Sorry. I made a mistake. Nestor Mendros, the direct photography, he's the one that died. Terrence Malick is still going. Terrence Malick also made a film called Knight of Cups, which is a bizarre film.
I've never heard of that.
It's very odd. And what he does, I think it's very frustrating for the actors because like they have a script and they throw it all out. And it feels a bit like, you know, when you're making a film, the camera rolls, you know, people are fidgeting and getting stuff ready. The board comes in, the clapper goes in, there's a pause, everybody settles, and then the director yells action. And then when you're at the end of the thing, the director yells cut, and the camera doesn't cut immediately necessarily. There's a few frames. It feels like he makes these movies with the beginning and the end,
right,
and not the middle. So it's weird. But the thing about his movies, his style, is it's how we dream. It's bits and pieces of stuff. So there's no narrative to really hold on to, but you're swimming in the unconscious. You know, I don't know that I could make a sustained film like that, but I like doing little bits of that here and there when I make stuff, you know, to sort of shift you into a different state, into sort of a more dreamlike state, so that you can maybe process what you just heard or what you just saw.
You know, I think is good at that, but in a nasty way, is Aronofsky.
Yeah.
And he really, I've always said, I watch his movies and I'm like, I think he fucking hates me. I think he hates the audience.
He might, right?
It's such a trauma.
Yeah.
But he can replicate the sensation of hysterical pathology and psychosis so well on film.
Yeah.
That it's, you know, I have to pause the films and walk away and like, okay, let's go. Let's try again. It's tough, but he has that ability. The reason I mention him is that the dreamlike part, that, you know, you're in reality, but it's like a drug-induced fever dream that you just want to end. It's awful. You just want it to stop. Yeah. And when it stops, it's catastrophe.
Yeah, it's true, right? The other thing, obviously I love a lot of Spielberg's films. Spielberg's films are generally very organized. For me, sometimes too organized. Because I can feel the construction of the scene. Yeah. Like I can feel the camera. I'm aware of the camera moving. Yes. Personally, I feel like all of that should disappear. Yeah. You know, a well-made film, hopefully you don't even notice.
That's the hope.
You don't even notice. You don't even know you're watching a movie. You suspend all disbelief and you're thoroughly in that world. You don't know there's a crew there. You don't know any of that's there, you know?
So with Spielberg, I'd had the same thing. Like, I'm like, this is good filmmaking. Yeah. I am enjoying the way this film has been made so well. Yes. But I'm not like the Blade Runner moments. Like I'm there with Decoded, wherever he's like buying from a food stand and he's talking to. I'm there with Spielberg. Even the beautiful stuff he did with Saving Private Ryan, like the first few scenes. Amazing. You're full of admiration. Yeah. I'm not sure that I know what you're talking about.
It's a little bit theatrical.
Yes.
Again, look, I want to say one thing though, because everybody criticizes movies and they need to understand the fact that any film gets made is a fucking miracle. Yes. So people can like pull shit apart, but like really the amount of fucking drama and politics that's happening, the fact that it gets made, good for you.
I just watched I just watched Mel Gibson talking about this on a round table last night. And he's like, this should never happen. When he said, if you're there on set and you know the budget and the time frame we have, he was talking specifically about Hacksaw Ridge and comparing it to, he said he had half the time and half the budget that he did for Braveheart. And it's 20 years later. Yeah. And he said, there's no way that should have been made. And not only was it finished, it's a good movie. Yeah. But he said it's chaos and people don't know the amount of strain and the like grit that it takes to actually get the thing finished.
No, making a movie, you know, because what happens is, you know, you have a 90-page or 100-page script, right? And you have producer and line producer go through it and say, okay, looks like it's going to take you this many days. And you say, you want me to shoot 5 pages a day? Now, 5 pages a day doesn't sound to somebody doesn't sound like a lot if you're like doing a podcast. Yeah. But 5 pages a day, depending on how you shoot, you could just shoot one shot that's 5 minutes long and everybody's falling asleep. Yeah. Or you can shoot 70 shots and everybody's there and staying awake. But now you have to shoot 70 shots in one day.
With multiple takes, presumably.
With multiple takes. And every time you move the camera, like we're in a situation right now where it's lit in such a way that every direction is going to kind of work. Yeah. And there are compromises. Like we could light this way better. Yeah. You know, if we're doing a single shot at a time. Yeah. Every time you move the camera, there's a whole bunch of shit that has to happen. You know, we talk about on set, let's turn around. And turn around is like, fuck. It's like you've shot everything this way. Yeah. Now you got to shoot that way. Right. Now all the shit that's over there has to move over there. Yes. And that's like 20 big fucking trucks and blah, blah, blah and whatever. And all the lighting and humans
bags and
trailers and whatever, you know. And it's like, it's a laborious process, which is why sometimes directors, we go like, God, I wish I could just be me and the camera. Which is fun, but you don't get, you know, you don't get much of a film, but it's an incredible process. It's like, and the good thing, everybody knows their job really well. You have a good crew and there's military precision. And it's changing as well. Like I went on the set of, I can talk about this, right? Because there's stuff out now. So Obi-Wan Kenobi, there's the making of Obi-Wan, which is on Disney, which is kind of cool to watch. Not everybody, a lot of sci-fi people are now using what are called virtual backgrounds. And it's a different way of filmmaking. And basically what it means is everything behind us, if you look at the two shot, everything behind us would actually be LED screens.
Right.
And the camera's back here. And so you're actually projecting the environment back there. And it's a very cool process. It's called the volume.
Okay.
The stage, it's massive. It's millions of dollars of LED screens. And it's a different way of filmmaking. And in some ways, it's making things move faster. But if it's not executed well, it looks like shit. And you're like, that's the volume.
Yeah.
You know? But if you look at like, you know, a lot of the new Star Wars things like Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, a lot of the Star Wars series, and a lot of the Marvel movies now, that's all volume. That's not really, none of that's really there.
I find, I didn't realize this was happening, but across time, over the last 10 years, I started to report after a movie to my friends. I felt a bit numb. And I thought it was that I was just getting overstimulated and I just had enough of watching giant robot monsters tear Manhattan apart. And I think actually it's also the special effects has
It
changed.
might be. And also what happens, you know, it's rough for an actor. Like if you're shooting on big blue screens, you know, and basically for people to understand, you know, if we're sitting here and there'd be a blue screen or a green screen behind us, and there's like, you know, dinosaurs back there charging towards us. As an actor, you're looking at an X and somebody's yelling, the dinosaur is 20 meters away, 15, 10, you're fucked. And, you know, it's an X. You know, looking at an X.
Yeah.
And you can say, yeah, but that's what actors are paid for, their imagination. Yeah, but it's hard.
Yeah, we should also help them a little bit.
It's hard. I mean, you're and you know, like my wife Bonnie was saying that when they did the Attack of the Clones or whatever thing she was in, I forgot. It's terrible, I forgot. Star Wars people are going to be like, my God, how can you forget? She said, like, you're living on a blue screen.
So most of that is done.
It's like not fun.
Yeah.
Like, the people are there.
Yeah.
But like, it's all just blue.
Yes.
And somebody's saying to you, that's what's going on out there. There's a Death Star and like a bunch of shuttles and shit and stormtroopers, but you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I think I had a conversation here 6 months ago with quite a famous film critic from Liverpool. And we were having this kind of conversation, and he spoke about Spielberg, and he said, you know, people mock Spielberg because it's kind of hokey sometimes, a little like American folksy stuff gets in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I don't watch him anymore. And he said, did you see AI? And I went, no, I'm not watching that. Some stupid story about a little boy who's going to come to life as an adult. He said, no, that's not what AI is. He said, that's a Stanley Kubrick movie that Stanley gave to Spielberg. Watch it.
Yeah.
I was horrified. I was like, is this Spielberg?
Yeah.
There's like child sex robots for pedophiles.
Yeah, it was weird.
I watched it and I was like, I don't know whether I even thought it was a good movie. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. And I finished it and I was like, I don't know what to feel. I don't know what to think.
It's you kind of entranced. You're like,
yeah.
You know, Spielberg, Kubrick, another filmmaker. I mean, Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
2001. All film people still watch 2001, and we sit there in awe.
When I was younger, I tried it and I was like, oh, this is boring. I went back to it as an adult and I was like, this is, I think with Stanley Kubrick, he respects the audience's intelligence. He's not spoon feed. He's not like, oh, you're there's a bunch of American idiots here who just want to see bang bang go fly in the air.
Yeah.
He's like, no, here's the space for you to think.
Yes.
And we're lingering on this shot so that you can actually enjoy this moment.
Exactly.
Which is, it's so much more
It's
trust.
refreshing. Yeah. You know, there are some stupid people that make some stupid decisions in Hollywood. Let me just fucking say it. Do you remember when Gladiator first came out? I don't know what the ads were like in the UK, but in America, they thought, let's show football players hitting each other for people to understand what gladiators are.
Really?
Yeah. That was the first ad. And I'm like, are you fucking joking? I fucking know what a gladiator is.
Hello, America. This is a gladiator, much like football, but with swords.
And I was like, who is the idiot that said, oh, they're too dumb? And that's the problem. You know, you gotta, if you think your audience is out of reach, fine, let them reach.
Yeah.
They like efforts.
Yeah.
You know, you like watching the thing where you're like, what's going on? People loved Lost.
Yes.
Because they're like, what the fuck is going on?
It's a shame that they had no payoff.
Oh my God.
They only had mystery. They only had mystery and no payoff.
No, I think what happened, and this does happen, by the way, you get greenlit for season 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
At a certain point, you have 3 more seasons.
Yeah.
And the studio's like, fuck it, no, this is it. And you're like, how am I going to wrap this up?
Yeah.
Let's put him in a church. It was all an imagination. Oh my God, you assholes. But I know why it happened.
Yeah. Do you think it started as being commissioned for 1 season? People loved it and they went, oh no, we're going to give you more money.
No,
and
when
they
you
just kept dragging
pitch
it,
you usually pitch a pilot and you usually have what we call a show Bible, and it's multiple seasons.
Right.
Like I have one that's got 7 seasons, still working on trying to get it made, but like I have a pilot and I have the first season laid out very well. And then I have like, a general outline of the other 6 seasons. So you hope for more.
You hope for more.
Yeah.
You hope for more. So as far as recovery from the cults go, do you feel like you've recovered?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Just so that people, if people are recovering from cult abuse or narcissistic abuse, there is hope.
There is hope. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm 6 years out. The first few years were hell. I think, we go through some of that in the course. I think we get into great detail.
Yep.
But there is hope.
Yeah.
Getting out of a relationship or a family or a corporation or a church or a cult or a political cult. There is hope. There is actually a pathway out. I thought at first when I first realized, holy shit, I've been in a cult, I didn't know that there was a path out. Until I started reading the books about it. And so I started watching the movies about it. I was like, oh, there's a way out. Just like you don't know that the narcissist has a playbook.
Yeah.
You don't know at first that there's also a playbook for exit. There are people that know how to help you get out.
Yes.
And when I say get out, yes, get out of the cult, but also get out of the mind trap, because it's a mind trap that you've been stuck in.
Where can people find you, Mark, if they want to follow you?
I'm most active on Instagram, so Mark Vicente. I have a website, markvicente.com. I am also, on Facebook and X and, TikTok. I play around a little bit, but mostly just go to my website or Instagram. That's where I am. Wonderful. And the other thing that people should look forward to is, this is now 2023, the end of 2023. Next year, 2024, a film called Empathy Not Included will be coming out about narcissism, narcissistic abuse. It's going to be fascinating.
Excellent. Mark, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, man.
Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Cheers.